tous. Comme c'était demandé, je vais me lancer dans un petit message d'introduction en anglais, puisque la conférence était en anglais, bien que j'ai l'impression que la majorité de participants soit plutôt francophone, mais ça ne fait rien, donc on va faire comme si c'était, et donc good afternoon, happy new year to all. Thank you for being here, and first I apologize for my bad English, but I replace Élise Lavoué, who is in charge of new technologies in IAE Lyon, and today with little baby Julie, who is just 2 months old, so I must replace Élise, and fortunately Diane accepts to present the conference and the debate, and so thank you Diane from TELUC for this help. In IAE Lyon we are at the very beginning of using new technology in teaching, so we thought that it was more important to have experience feedback from our foreign colleagues who are at the moment in IAE Lyon. And I thank you, Jan from TELUC, and I have my little paper. Sorry. Jorge?
Jorge.
From Mexico?
Yes, let's see.
Thank you for your collaboration and agreeing to present your work and answer questions. I hope we'll have a lot of questions which will be asked. I think it's finished for my job, and thank you, Dad. You will do the most. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what I was thinking of doing is just to do a bit of a short presentation, initially kind of a general introduction to the context, before I go into TELUC and how we use the technologies and what we do, and eventually maybe show you 2 or 3 websites of courses, and well, mainly the idea was to have a discussion and exchange. So I'm going to do a short presentation, and then also Jorge will do a presentation, and we can exchange on this. And then I had a few questions that were presented, sent to me by Élise, on which she wanted us to discuss, and so that would kind of be a second part. There were precise questions on how teachers, how professors receive the technologies, how students receive them, etc. So that will be kind of part in the second part. So initially, just to present kind of the general context, first of all, Téléuniversité, TELUC, is part of the University of Quebec. It has existed since 1968-69. The university was created at that time. It's a public university in Quebec. And TELUC is really the distance education component, so specialized in distance education, e-learning now, as the Open University in Great Britain and a few others in Australia. It's interesting to see the history of it in the sense that the Anglo-Saxon world has developed e-learning and distance education maybe before the Francophone world. And that is one of the reasons why Quebec has developed it, because being part of Canada, the connections with Great Britain, of course, that brought us into e-learning and distance education at the end of the 60s. Now, one of the reasons why we're talking about this quite a lot today, even in our campus universities, because I also work a bit in some campus universities in Quebec, is the fact that recently there's been more interest in this, partly because of what has been developing over recent years, the MOOCs, massive open online courses. There's quite a lot of questions now in terms of the impact eventually of the MOOCs on traditional universities, and what should traditional universities or traditional teaching be doing? How should we be adapting? And I think mainly the question is that MOOCs and technologies are largely changing how we learn, how we want to learn, or especially maybe how our young students want to learn. They want to learn differently, and when we can learn. So there's a change in how and when, in the sense that, of course, again, we're going to see that there's different models, different ways, but one of the great advantages of distance education and e-learning is the fact that you can learn. There was a title of an article called Here, There, and Everywhere. So it's, yeah, and basically it's kind of changing our vision on learning and opening up much more, bringing us to think that, yeah, you're not always just learning when you're sitting in a classroom and listening to someone. You're learning in different ways, different times. So I think that's really the main change. We're changing in how we learn, when we learn. It means more flexibility. It also means more scalability or modularity, in the sense, I think in France particularly, you often have courses 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours. In North America and Quebec and Canada, Mexico, I think you often also, as we do, have like a normal course would be 15 hours. It can be a bit less, it can be more, and particularly when you're doing adult education, then it can be different. But in our regular courses, at least with University of Quebec and throughout Canada and the US, usually for us, it's 3 hours a week in a classroom over 15 weeks. So obviously, especially when we're thinking now of lifelong learning, of adult education, people who are working have constraints. And for them, sitting in a classroom for 3 hours every 15 weeks might be difficult. Also, another important change in the labor market is the fact that people aren't necessarily working regular hours. So if you're not working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you might have a difficulty registering at the university to take a course on Thursday evening, because if you're working in the health sector, in the service industry, in hotels, restaurant, well, you might not know what your schedules are, so you won't be registering for a course on Thursday evening when you might be working half of the time. So that's one important element. However, I think one of the elements that kind of stay, that kind of does not change, is the issue of how do we motivate students, whether we're in distance or whether in a classroom. So I want to highlight the fact that there are differences, but there's also similarities. We have to think of the same things. At the same time, I would say that I was teaching in classroom, of course, campus education for some time, and when I came to distance education, that's kind of when I suddenly realized that, well, I've got a PhD, but I have no courses in pedagogy. And the challenge of doing distance education or e-learning brings you to the idea that, well, okay, I have to also think maybe a little bit more than I thought of pedagogy. And I think these new tools, the MOOCs, etc., are also bringing us to think a little bit more about pedagogy. Of course, we think about it when we're with students in a classroom, but when they're distant, then you have to think of it maybe a little bit more. I think now where we're going through is we're changing the model of pedagogy from something more traditionally transmissive, le cours magistral, to something which is more interactive. We're moving to something where we're putting the accent more or at least as much on the student as on the professor, the one who is supposedly knows and gives the information. Now we're thinking, well, no, we're working with students. And again, I think it comes a lot from adult education. In adult education, people always thought that, yeah, well, I'm dealing with people who already know quite a lot. They're in a work environment, so I don't deal with them in the same way as I deal with younger students, maybe. So this is something which is also very much, I think, integrated into e-learning or distance education. And maybe one of the more recent changes is that we used to see, especially as I've been doing a lot of either campus or distance education, it tended to be two separate things. Either I was teaching on campus or I was teaching distance e-learning. What is changing now is we're seeing it mainly in Australia. It's a very strong movement. In Quebec and Canada also, we're starting to think along those lines, although it's not always easy, is we're moving towards hybrid, or what we call hybrid or blended learning. That is, we're going to combine. Sometimes the students are going to be distant, doing things on their own, and sometimes they're going to come into a meeting room. I don't know whether we should still call it a classroom, but at least a meeting room or a seminar room. And I think this is probably where most of us want to go, ideally. However, it's not easy, of course, to change from the campus university has its way of functioning, and the distance education or e-learning also has other ways of functioning. But more and more we consider that maybe the blended and hybrid model might be the model of the future. we don't know yet, but I think we're thinking more and more that it's quite possible, in the sense that when we talk about the motivation of students, sometimes over 15 and 16 weeks, at the end, the interest drops down. And even the professor, you think, well, I've pretty much given the essence of my message. And so sometimes we think, well, in the end of the last weeks, or maybe they become a little bit less interested, less motivated, etc. So the idea it has been over recent years, well, maybe they should work more on their own, because also that's one of the things that I sometimes have found, even in master's classes. You give them readings and suddenly you realize that they're not necessarily reading them. And you say the class is a seminar, we're supposed to be exchanging, and they ask very general questions, so you say, I think they haven't read the documents. So the idea of moving to a hybrid model would be that maybe they would feel more engaged, and they would feel that, yeah, during the 3 weeks when they're not sitting in class, they have to do something. And then they really bring something to the class. And this is a little bit the way we also think in distance education or online. We're trying to find the way to motivate them, while at the same time, if we're doing mainly, and I'm going to come back on this, mainly distance education in an asynchronous way, in the sense that there's different ways of doing distance. There's one way which is I can be on a video and the students are there, and the other way is I'm giving material, written, video, audiovisual, and I'm not necessarily on a synchronous exchange with them. So when it's asynchronous, you're not with them at the same time, you have to find other ways of motivating them. But at the same time, we often find that in these cases, it's often students who have constraints with work, and they're adults. And sometimes I was actually surprised in the beginning when I started doing this, to realize that they almost have sometimes more motivation, because they're coming back, they're really coming back to get something. So there's still a bit of an issue in terms of motivation, but sometimes while we might think that it might be easy or whatever, sometimes we find that they're much more motivated. In classrooms, sometimes you ask for 10 or 15 pages and they try to negotiate 5 or 7. Well, I have actually found the opposite in e-learning or distance. The people are so much engaged in the course, it's going to be useful for their work, that you ask for 15 pages and they give you 40. So there's this question which is also interesting. I mentioned the MOOCs, and on this I want to say a few things, because even my vision, I don't know if you've looked at these different courses, there's all sorts of websites, MIT, Stanford, a lot of universities have started to develop this. Initially I saw them more as kind of a marketing thing, to let people know that, oh, you know, we're doing something, we're doing this. But they do have courses. However, when I looked at them, they're quite concentrated in a certain number of themes: mathematics, IT, sometimes some things in social sciences, but very, very general, history, kind of universal, not very, very specialized. And I was surprised to see that a lot of them are on a synchronous perspective, in the sense that they say, well, from this date on, this course will be offered. Whereas initially I thought it would have been something completely open. And in HEC and a few universities in Quebec, it tends to be the more open, maybe more marketing perspective. MIT, Stanford have developed courses, but very often we see course starts at this date. Why does it start at this date? Initially I didn't understand, but actually it's probably because the professor, for the people who want a certificate, the professor will be there to respond, and so they give a date. Because for the others who don't want a certification, there's no real reason to have a date to start and to finish. But in any case, my view on the MOOCs, when I look at what's online there, I find they're quite limited. They're often synchronous, so they impose a timeline to the students or to the people who want to follow them. Limited subjects. A lot of us are in management. I don't find that there's that much in management. In social sciences, not that much either. I find that it's very general, not very, well, I don't know whether, I think we could ask ourselves to what extent in each of our different societies or worlds, to what extent it would be socially relevant. It's, you know, it tends to be more universal courses, and of course that's the idea, reaching a lot of people. Another of the issues that comes up is there's some for-profit sites and there's some non-profit sites. So there's an issue here in terms of maybe a risk that some for-profit companies will kind of invade our university teaching, and what will they do? The issue of quality, the issue of certification. When they give a certificate, they give you the choice. You can just follow it, or you can have a certificate. But what is the quality? What is the guarantee related to the certificate? People have to pay for it. I think there's a bit of an issue here. And there's also the issue of the financial model, because MIT, Stanford are putting these things online. They have some money behind, but to which extent will they go? How far will they go giving out things for free? In some cases, some things were free initially, I think with Columbia University, and over time they decided not to offer anything free anymore, and they start to, so in that perspective it would be kind of a marketing perspective, and then we sell it. Or we give, as some places do, it's like the MOOC is only a 10, 15 or half-hour talk by a professor, and the idea is to bring you into the regular course. So there's a few questions, I think, here. There's also a certain number of questions. In distance education over the years, we started to develop what we called educational resources, open educational shared resources, some call them. Some also call them resource bank. So it's like an open access where any professor could go and use some of the material. In our university, we have developed some books, we have developed some videos, and some others, people could use them in Quebec or across the world. So here again, there's this idea of either pedagogical resources that we're sharing, and this also this also explains the interest sometimes of having distance education work with campus universities. Within University of Quebec, for example, I have developed some things that I use completely distance, and my colleagues use the DVD or the videos that I have done in the classroom. So in terms of pedagogical, some of people also call them pedagogical objects that you can have access to. So there's something else which I think is interesting or important to look at. Also to maybe reflect on the importance of e-learning, educational tools, etc. There was some research done in the US maybe 10 years ago, and about 1/3 or 40% of universities said that they were preoccupied or concerned or interested by the development of technologies and eventually these pedagogical objects. And now, today, 77% of them are interested or concerned or preoccupied. And I think the case here is more or less the same. So I think what I mean to say by this is that there's a rapid evolution. Suddenly we're seeing that this is happening in different ways, and so we have to be interested or questioned or preoccupied. Another important dimension, I think important to mention, is the fact that there's kind of a diversity of, or maybe a continuum of things, or from the ad hoc online course, 10 minute, 15, 20 minute. There's another case, which is Cisco, the company, that does learning as a paying service online. And I think we see this a lot in the IT sector. So there's a question, particularly for our colleagues, I think, in the IT sector. Their basic IT courses at one point might be either disappearing or replaced by the courses done by, well, the companies who produce these things. Educational partnerships. In the beginning, some universities started to develop, MIT, Stanford, and that started to develop specific sites, Open University in Great Britain. Over the recent years, they seem to be developing more partnerships because this is costly. It seems sometimes to be inexpensive, but if you want to do it well, it's more costly. It's not excessive, but it's more expensive than just putting the video with the professor, which is kind of the basic style. And then there's vocational training. Some universities and there's a group in US called Western Governors University, and Cisco would be kind of the same thing. It's really very, very specific vocational training or technological training. And then there's the blended hybrid, which combines the face-to-face and the distance. So again, I think in all these different models or different ideas, this question of how do we engage students? What is the quality of these different things? Is there certification? Sometimes the students don't care about certification, but for a lot of people in our world of lifelong learning, a lot of people want to show their company or their employer that they have done something new, and maybe they should have a wage increase or whatever. So before the employer gives a wage increase, well, the employer wants to know what is the validity of this. Over the years, universities have established a validity, but then for these private companies or private groups, the question is open. I'm just going to come back now. I've kind of just set the general scene on TILUC. What do we do? How do we do it? I mentioned there's two big formulas. One is synchronous, asynchronous. In University of Quebec, a lot of the campuses in the regions like Chicoutimi, Rimouski, Abitibi-Témiscamingue, they do distance education, but they do it on a synchronous basis. The traditional way has been the professor gives his course with a group, but there's a filming of the presentation, and this is sent. Or another model, Chicoutimi and Rimouski. At one point, I was the Chicoutimi professor, and I'm giving a class, but it's being filmed, and some students are in Rimouski, 3 kilometers away, and they are following, and they can ask questions. And there's now more and more webinars that are done in that format. So this is one way, the synchronous way, where everybody has to get together at the same time. And the other model is the asynchronous, which is our model at TILUC, because the campus universities do it in a synchronous way. We tend to do it more in an asynchronous way, especially for the BA level. Back in Quebec, it's back, but here the equivalent to the licence. However, when we do master's, second, or PhD, then we tend to do more blended, and we have a part of synchronous where we might want to meet the students. At the BA level, in general, when we try to introduce things like online exchanges, if we try to introduce a synchronous dimension, usually the students said, look, I come to you for the flexibility from the time perspective, not only from the distance, actually almost more from the time perspective. Half of our students are in Montreal, 1/3 in Quebec City. So contrarily to what people think, it's not so much the people that are disseminated all over, the province and far away from the central university. It's more people who work and have time constraints who actually are our students. And so for them, it's important not to be tied to a specific timeline. The other element that I wanted to mention is clearly, of course, the evolution of tools over time. When I started, we were doing, I still do a lot of video. I find it's interesting. In a classroom, you can tell students about a case study, or you can give them something to read on a case study. The great advantage I found in my university was I can go and do the interviews in a company, and I actually bring the case study as more or less a documentary. And it's true that our initial TV programs or video programs were actually shown on Télé-Québec and on Canal Savoir, that are distance education TVs, if you want. So we've moved actually from written documentation and videos to now, and then to CDs and DVDs, to now more or less an online site, which is the majority of our courses. And for example, this, although it's strangely enough, as I mentioned, it seems to be kind of exploding. Everything, it's kind of the double size as it should be. But in any case, this gives you an idea of a course. This is one course that we have online. Most courses are along this kind of format. On the left, you have on the course, accueil. Here I give a little presentation of the course. I say welcome to the students, etc., etc. On the right here, we have different possibilities. Rechercher. If they want to look for something on the site, they can do this. Here, prise de notes. They want to just take a few notes here, they can do this. Actualité is a place for me to put something. I'm doing a conference next week. There's an article in a local newspaper on the subject of the course. So here I can put this kind of information. These are kind of the tools, some of the tools that we use. Then if we look here to the left, accueil, I present the course. Then presentation of the course. Here again, there's some elements of content. They don't seem to necessarily all be coming through. Well, up here is a video. So maybe the video is a little bit longer to come in. But just to give you kind of the idea, this is asynchronous. The student is autonomous. And it's true that they choose it because they can be completely autonomous. So here I am presenting something. Introduction to the course. In most cases we have this. And then I will also have in the course, to the left here, you have feuille de route, is where I tell them basically every week I suggest. Because you can do your course in 5 weeks if you want, you can do it in 10 or 15, but we give suggestions to the students because we find that they still like to have some suggestions, not to be left out completely. Whereas some educational theories, some colleagues of mine say, more and more now education is open and students like to come in anywhere. And in some courses, it's possible for them to do it. For example, if I have interviews with different specialists on different themes, they can listen to the whole interview of one specialist, or they can say, on this one theme, I want to hear what every specialist says. So they have the different ways of coming into the material, but we have found over time that they like to have a suggestion of how to do it. So here I'll present that, and then the evaluation, of course, is very important. We explain to them how they're going to be evaluated. In most cases, this is one typical course, I have them do one or two, I have them do a little bit of work. Important note on intellectual integrity. I think we all have the same problem, whether it's distance or campus. People can copy, and we remind them that even if they're at a distance, there are ways for us to find out that they're copying. So this is another important dimension. Then help, this is also important. There's a series of resources in the university, campus, whether distance, that they can have access to. So in every course we remind them that these resources are available. Then this is the course. This is the learning part, first part, second part, whatever, we can organize this in different ways. And then we explain to the right, well, week 1 you have this and this. You're going to look at the website, read these papers, and then do the activities. In general, most of the weeks is more or less like this. Or look at a video and then do different types of activities. But basically we follow the traditional scheme of 15 weeks, more or less. And then we have the work that they do, dépôt des travaux, online. They can send the work and it's going to be corrected either by me or by tutors, because we tend to have a good number of students. So it's not only professors doing the correction. I hire some people to not only correct, but also to have interaction with the students. The students can call or send email, and there's some either teaching assistants or tutors, depending on the level, that can respond to the students. Then we have boîte à outils. Here, Zone Multimédia, they can find all the videos that are in the course. They are there. So if they're looking for this more specifically, or they want to come back at the material, well, they go into this. And here I have, what's interesting, of course, with this type of distance education, as in my class, sometimes I could invite somebody, but the person is not always available. Well, you can eventually film the person and have it. So I at least tend to do a lot of interviews. I'm in human resources management, so I go into companies, I do interviews with employers, employees on all sorts of themes. Here it's aging, management of aging in the company. Another course is on work-life issues, another one's on work organization, technological change, whatever. So we have videos to really bring the students to know different contexts and to be, well, maybe more aware of these kind of situations. Ressources intéressantes, I can indicate all sorts of websites or other resources. Bibliothèque à distance, this is another important thing. If you have students at a distance, well, they're learning from home, they're living in the suburbs, they're not going to come to the university to go to the library, and even on campus, they come less and less. They go to the online library, that's it. And then Actualité, again, I can present things there. And this is on Moodle, by the way. And so in our university, we have some colleagues of mine in education had developed very smart types of websites and things. Over the years, one of the things we realized is that technologies change all the time. So if in one university, and this is valid for campus as well as distance, if you have many technologies, it's going to be very costly to keep them all update. And also the students at one point like to kind of be comfortable with what they're using. So this is another important dimension. So we have more or less reverted, a lot of us, to Moodle. Some colleagues sometimes prefer their own little thing that they developed. But what we tended to do is that we said Moodle is going to be the basis. And it's true that these 3 or 4 other colleagues in IT or education have developed interesting tools. So what we do is we integrate them into Moodle. It has some constraints, because when you integrate too many specific tools, then it limits the capacity of the professor to change things online. So as much as you keep it standardized, the professor can change more things. If you go into more specialized, specific, then sometimes you have to go to the IT people. So here's another debate. What is the role of the professor, and what is the role of the IT people or the educational specialist? There's a bit of an issue here. So the pedagogical formulas have changed from book and paper. Some people used to call it also really distance education was seen as something, and I think in France, Le CNAM also sent out a lot of written stuff. Well, over the years, we're not sending that much out. We're just sending like a code for the students to get in. Maybe just the other thing that I should mention, just come back to the role of the professor. because it changes a little bit. And again, it depends on what you do. I have usually written a book for most of my courses. I have done interviews. I've developed a kind of a documentary. In the beginning, now I don't necessarily do all the editing myself, but in the beginning I did, which is good because you know how it functions. But in that case, you're almost doing a little bit of a journalist's work. So it's something else. So either you do it or you have somebody else do it. If you've done it, it's also easier to have somebody else do it because you know what you can do and what you can't do. But it's true that your role changes a bit. You tend to be maybe doing a little bit more research, but again, if you're doing a basic course, like some colleagues, the introductory management course or the introductory statistics course, there's tons of books. So you take the book and you put something online and you really think of what the work the students are going to do for their work. However, if you have other themes, like I do, agisme dans la société, management of aging, work-life issues, I actually consider that it's a great advantage because you integrate some of your research in your course, you write books, you do videos, but it's more work. And when TELUC started working with UQAM, which is a campus university, part of Université du Québec, one of the issues that the campus professors were asking is, well, you know, normally the normal workload is teaching 4 courses of 45 hours a week, 45 hours a semester, throughout the year. So 2 courses in the fall, 2 in the winter. Okay, if I do my course online, what is the equivalent? There were some discussions. The university had said to them, well, it could be 2 or 3 courses. And we actually said 2 or 3 is a little bit limited. Not so much because it's not equivalent, but it's because sometimes you're working with teams, you're doing the videos, it takes time. So personally, I have found that the first year at the university, I didn't even complete 1 course. But after 2 years, I had done 2 courses, just because things don't happen all at the same time, and you're working more in team. So you have to take that dimension into account. Now we're developing all sorts of new tools, some interesting tools, which I find are interesting in terms of innovation. In some of my courses now, I'm going to integrate what is called the e-portfolio, portfolio numérique. That is that the student does work, but rather than just sending it here, where we have, they can send la boîte dépôt des travaux, rather than sending it here, I correct it or a tutor corrects it and sends it back, or they go back online and they find the corrections. Now, this is interesting because especially for adult students, they kind of have a personal space where they can keep all of what they want and they can either show it to the others, and this also brings new things for us to do. We can have the students exchanging on what the others did. We can have them doing some work and then just having kind of a discussion on this. And then the student can also, if the student is looking for a job, the student can have this website, this place where he says to the employer, look, these are things that I have done. And it looks better as an e-portfolio, of course, as here's the work that I did in a course so-and-so. So this is another interesting dimension. We're moving to e-portfolio. We're also doing blogs online where the student can exchange. We found that they don't like to be too limited in terms of time, but they sometimes like to have exchanges either with the students that are following the same course, or also we have a café étudiant. We have a series, and I won't go into this, but if there's any questions I can go into more detail. But we also found that they sometimes like to reproduce the university campus online. And so we have a student newspaper where they can contribute. We have a café étudiant where some people can write, and a lot of this is in the format either of blog or video, and of course with all the tools that we have, Skype, etc., etc. So I think I'm going to stop with this, and we're going to go on to the presentation by Jorge, who's going to present the experience in Mexico and his own personal experience.
I would like to know the background. What would you like to know about what of the things that we are doing, and in which stage you are? I would like to ask everyone if you could tell me very briefly. If you are doing e-learning already, if you are designing, or if you are teaching online, or if you are, or if you will, or you want to teach online. Maybe we can really briefly. Don't worry about English.
I try e-learning. That's all.
You try. You.
I have done nearly the same thing as Madame Tremblay,
Okay.
but only for sequencing of
Yeah.
my course. And I put some more documents and so on.
Yes.
No video, maybe one day.
Okay.
Voilà.
Thank you. It's the courses that you have regularly at campus, and
Yes,
you
yes, yes.
you use this
Yes.
platform for
Yeah.
sequencing. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. Hola.
I have two functions here.
Yeah.
I'm in charge of executive education
Yes.
and in the way of developing new courses and new programs for professional. And I'm teaching auditing and management control. And I have started this year with Patricia one course of 3 hours, totally in e-learning for master students.
Okay. Teaching management on online 3 hours a week.
Yes, well, this year for the first time.
First time.
But
Synchronic.
for me, I'm here because I have a lot of demand of our professional for lifelong learning
Yeah.
in this way of e-learning. So
Thank you. People that watch.
I'd like to know how to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. What you do is with the video.
So it's mixed of video, of documents and questionnaire tests
okay.
online, documents,
Thank you.
different type of
Yeah,
documents.
it's pretty the same that we do. Yeah. Thank you. Hello. Hello.
No, we don't have e-learning.
Yes.
Yes, I'm from University of Economics Prague. So we would like to learn more about it if it is a good opportunity for us to be developed. If not, we use of course the e-system of the university where students have a place where they can submit their work in order that we correct it. They receive all documents, they can receive also videos if they open it on their computer. However, still they have contact hours, 26 contact hours per semester for the smallest courses, and of course multiplication for more important courses, and that's it. So maybe the e-learning, I will have after them some questions on e-learning, how to manage it from the perspective of the university or of the faculty. Because from the perspective of the teacher, so I think that I understand. From the IT, I don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
However, then there would be some financial questions and so on.
Okay. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, I'm a teacher here, and I would like to develop the online course, but it's the beginning today.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, I'm a student here, but we're not using e-learning much. But I used to be a student at the University of Melbourne, and they use the LMS and e-learning all the time. So I know both sides of the story.
Thank you.
I like, I don't know, it's nice to have some way to work at home from your computer and have all the information you want whenever you want them. But it's also nice to be in a class and exchange with other students and other teachers. So I'm here because I have to write an article on this conference, which is interesting. And I also really like it. It's an interesting subject, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, I'm a student and I have never tried it, but I find it very interesting. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm also a student, a friend, and I was interested by the course, and I had some online courses to learn a language before, and but it was not online, really online courses. It was with the CNED, so it was very different from what I saw now. So that's why I'm interested by subjects.
Okay. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, I'm an employee here. I'm an assistant technique.
Okay. Yes.
I help the teachers on Moodle.
Okay.
And I work on some e-learning project.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I have some context. You are doing.
In fact, all my courses are sequenced and with a platform, and
I have no video because so very hard job and it's long. So I did not try, but all my courses are online and with a forum, base de données. Database. Everything. All my courses are from. I did it for a long time, 10 years ago, when we began in Lyon, the e-technology, with an old platform, and we are moving the platform. Spiral will be changed, and now we will be on Moodle, and it's very interesting. Your PowerPoint, because we see that we can have very interesting module on Moodle. And I think that we will ask you some questions and try to have better than we have. So thank you, Diane.
It looks very well.
Yes, it looks.
Yes. I started as you. I started using model as a sequencing. I still doing it in my campus. You said campus courses at presential education, and I still using model for my courses. And afterwards, I realized that I had to be not really near the university, and I needed to be still in contact with my students. Then I started designing some courses. I'm going to show you some photos, some images of what I do, and still talking about. I come from Mexico. Here is me, and you can say me Jorge. The place where I come is called Guanajuato, and I come from Universidad Iberoamericana León. It's Jesuit university, and it's 35 years old in at León, Guanajuato. It's pretty young. That's me. And my little daughters.
2, 3, 4, 5.
I have, yes, my wife and 3 of my daughters, very little daughters. And well, I have designed these courses. The first one is management. It's something about, it's marketing. It's distribution, merchandising, and it's a regular course. It's a 16-week, 8 years, and the students have to invest 8 hours per week. 16 weeks, 8 hours a week. It's a huge, yes, it is really huge. It's sometimes annoying. It is really long, and I designed the other courses, very little short courses, 48 hours in 6 weeks, and the 3 of them are designed in the same way, 48 hours, 8 hours a week for 6 weeks. Creativity for teachers, self-leadership, yes, and advertising, creativity advertising. It's really a challenge because there are topics that need the touch of someone, and it's really a challenge to design this. I'm going to talk to you how I do it. This is a course before putting the course into model. It looks like this. It's an Excel sheet, spreadsheet, and you have the planning of the activities and the objectives and the times for each activity, and even the resources maybe some objects, or maybe some readings, or what you need for this course you are designing. I start always this way when I design a course. At the first time I designed by weeks, and I started designing week by weeks. But in this course of 16 weeks, I realized that it was really difficult for the students being every week for 8 hours, and they had an assignment, another assignment, and an exam, or participation at the forum every week. When they were at the middle, they were really they didn't want to hear anything about my class. Even and they are. It is better when you choose, but when they don't have the right to choose what they want to study, it's really difficult, because they don't want to be there. And it is better that they choose. Now what I do is monthly, 4 weeks, this 16 weeks course, I divide it by months, and I give them this Gantt, and I show them in green they are okay, in yellow they are getting very less time for the assignment, and in red they are in danger. And this worked perfectly. Before I did this, the students were really confused about what they had to do and when was the deadline. Now they know the deadline since the beginning, since they open the web page. Now they know what they have to do. Always when I design activities, forums, and projects. I divide it, and they start doing their activities. Maybe it is a reading, and they have an essay, or they have to do something with this reading. I will show you what it will happen with these readings. And the forum is really important, because here is where the students reflect. The most important thing of education, I think, and I believe, that is reflection. If you do something, or you are trying to learn something, but you don't reflect about it, you never learn. Now, my students are, they have to. And here I make questions about the other readings and activities, and these questions make them think about it, and then they start to dialogue between them. They start talking with one with others, and at the end of the course project, they apply. I call this methodology, I call it exercise, apply, and reflect. Exercise, apply, and reflect. You get used to, then you go to other contexts and you apply it, and then you come back to the virtual classroom and share with others. When you share, you reflect. And well, the communication model is, the model of communication is this way. Here's the teacher, here's the online course, and here's the student, always. Now, the information goes, all the flow of information goes over there and comes back. Now, what I did I did this. I put here an experience. And why I did this? Because when I was going in only one way, and I used to talk to my students, the only thing they had, it was the result of the readings. And maybe the students are lazy about reading all the reference. They only read what they have to read. They only write what they have to write. They only do what you tell them to do. Now, I gave them instructions. Here are instructions. Only instructions. But these instructions are it's an experience. I take my students outside the classroom, even the virtual classroom. Then they go outside, they write about this experience, and they come back. Here's a little essay. The photo, the image is, this is my online course. This is an online course. They have to go outside. They have to see the world. They have to live the world. They need the experience. And afterwards, they have to come back and tell us what they did. In this activity, I asked them to buy for a family, a 5 members family. They are teams. These are teams of 5 members, and they only have the minimum salario mínimo de gobierno, the minimum salary of government monthly. Maybe in Mexico, 3 euros a day is they have to buy breakfast, lunch and dinner with 3 euros, and they realize what is the meaning of having that salary for a day. Now when they come back to the reflection, they say, wow, this is amazing, it is impossible to live this way. And they live an experience. I believe that they need experiences. If they bring experiences to the classroom, we have very, very plenty knowledge. Now, this is another exercise in the same course, 16 weeks, instructions. This is about wholesalers, distribution, the ones that sell to retailers. And I gave to them a map. This is a Google Earth map, and I gave to them the street view map. I control the experience. My job is to limit the experience, control this experience. I say to them, only this area. You won't be out of this area. What you have to do, you have to go there and sell to retailers or stores your product, and afterwards you have to resell and get profit. Here they are. Now they have an experience. They came back with an experience. I'm not reading a book. I'm doing things. And this is another exercise for the same course. They went to look for a place where to establish a shop. They took photos and they designed how it will look it, and they design everything. They design the logo and everything, and they are outside. Now, think about very difficult topics. Maybe sociology. What you teach? Economics. Very, very, very difficult. Maybe they can interview someone, or maybe they can buy something, or they can sell something, or they can only look at newspapers of other countries and look for some economic information, or do something. The instructions are for doing something and take back the experience. Now, there is some noise. It could be noise. This is a communication model. And here it could be the noise between the teacher and the online course. If the teacher is not able to be in touch with a platform, or doesn't have internet access, or the student doesn't have internet access, or if the teacher doesn't have the contact with the experience. Maybe that week, it had happened to me, that week you have to go to work to other place, and you are not in touch with the experience, and you are not controlling what is happening, but it could happen. Or the student with the experience. Maybe the instructions are not well written, and they know where to go. And it's a very quick view of what I do. I really love to teach, and I was trying to get this feeling of the classroom to the online courses. Thank you.
Thank you. So we go on to the discussion. Jorge has already done part of, I wanted to ask you from there on to present yourself, so that's already been done, so that's great.
Thank you.
We had a few questions that were asked of us, but I think it would be better to open up, and eventually if these questions that Elise had presented are not covered, we can eventually come back and see if they are also of interest to you. But I think the best thing is that we have an exchange and see how you react to what we presented.
Just one question.
Thank you.
I think you present to us more what we call a travaux dirigés. Experience for us, it's more travaux dirigés. You didn't give a magistral course online for the student?
Like a lecture.
Like a lectures.
Lecturing, presenting a course.
I do. I do it. Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, I do.
Of course, you have lecture online. And
this is online. This course you saw, it's all online.
I think
Yes.
the question is,
100% online.
at any point, are you doing as if you were in class and presenting?
No, never.
Never.
Never. The images I showed to you,
Yeah.
there are some students, I don't know them in presence. I only know them by photo.
Mm-hmm. And even online, because it's true that this is one of the, when I was saying, in University of Quebec, there has been for quite some time, because of the distance, courses that were given, like I'm in a classroom and they're seeing it somewhere else, and more now, a lot of universities now, and I think in France, I think even Institut d'études politiques, l'IEP is doing something like that. They just film the professor and so it's like they're transferring the class to another place.
Yeah.
So you
never.
Yeah,
I don't have videos. maybe I don't have the resources for having videos or the time for doing these videos. And what I do is prepare all the instructions for my students.
Like for example, I know that in Quebec, L'Université Laval often does that kind of thing. I think it depends on the material, the subject. There's a geography course where the geography professor has all these maps and or geopolitical, and there's also an art history course which even I followed some time ago, which is great because there's all this visual. But it's true that, for example, I can't see myself giving a macroeconomics course, especially for 2 hours or whatever, like this. I tend to do more documentary, short presentations, just to kind of have the contact with the student, welcome them, this is this, so and that. In economics, we have a colleague of mine who also did, and I went to see the MOOCs courses. There are a couple of macroeconomics and micro because that's kind of basics. One of them I thought, I don't know if I could watch this very long because you don't even see the person, you just see the person doing equations on the board. I think, wow, that must be pretty boring. One of my colleagues, what he did is a combination, at least a little bit more. There are the equations because he said distance, it's difficult for students if the equation is already all done as it is in the book. So he had, but somebody was presenting and the film shows the person presenting and doing the equation. But I think in a lot of other courses like human resources management or others, often it's more interesting. I do also a little bit like you do. I send them to do surveys. If the subject is so and so, I say, well, work life, for example. Well, in your own organization, do a survey and then bring this back. And now with the e-portfolio or the blog, they put it online, and as you say, so it creates interest for the content. And on the side, they read. But the material, rather than having a presentation of material, in a kind of cours magistral, is more replaced by written documents and active experience. Because it's true that I think listening, it's interesting that they have, as they see you, they like to see us, they like to have, the personal contact. But listening to us for 3 hours, when you're in front of the person, it's one thing. But listening on, I don't think that's a good format. But
I
some
think it's
universities
20 minutes, the longest time they can say.
Even less, because if they have the Facebook open, we lose them. Yeah, we really lose them.
It's as if Facebook is like, they're directly.
We lose them very, very, very easily.
But it's true that it's actually the same challenge as in the classroom. I mean, we see in the classroom, ever since now they have the computer, well, they started with the computer, now when it's the small little phone, I'm thinking their eyes are all going to be crooked because they're often like this. But yeah, that's the challenge. I think, it's the choice of, I think what's interesting is it's the choice of tools, choice of activities, and I also think, reflection. What I do also, a little bit along those lines, in the beginning of the course, I often have like in the beginning I didn't mark it, but then I decided to put like 5 points just to make sure they do it, because as you say, they don't always do what you want them to do. But so I say, okay, you're starting this course. What are your ideas on this? What do you think? What do you want to do? In labor economics, I ask them, how do you define unemployment? Usually they have the wrong definition. So just to get them kind of, okay, where am I? What do I think I know? So they realize that they don't necessarily really know what they think they know. And another class, it can be, why are you in this course? Again, depending, in a course on territory management and creativity, something we have in common in terms of themes, I say, well, what's your project? Why are you coming here? Think about it for a little while and just, jot down a few things on the paper. They don't necessarily need to share it all the time. They can sometimes if they want. But they don't need to. And then there's activities, things that they do, develop. And at the end, I ask them to kind of reflect back on and again, from one course to another, especially if it's a short program, maybe not for a licence or a bac. It's difficult to have something at the end because I don't remember. But if it's like a short program or a certificate, 5 or 10 courses, then you can ask them something in the beginning, even of the program, and in the end of the program. Where were you? Where are you? Okay.
After having experienced the world, is it easier for the students to read a book or to go further in references or literature references? Do you know that? if they feel better in this.
It is much more relevant what they read because they read before the experience. They read. They before yes.
Yes, but they do only what you want you
yes,
to do.
Yes.
But do you know if after this experience we are going to go further by their own? Only?
Yes, some of the times, or some of the students, not all, but they go further. Yes, they like it. It is relevant for them of doing this.
They are more curious.
Yes, more curious. Lots more. Yes.
I think also we have, I don't know, your students are mainly young students who are just coming to university,
yes,
right?
Yes.
I think that's also a big difference. In our university we have 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 adult students, 1/3 young students who are on campus somewhere else. And so the young students, of course, although in North America they tend to work part-time, but they might have less experience. And I know that, for example, one of the question of exchanges with others, some of my colleagues were saying that, and the young student there said that before, don't they miss exchanging with each other? And what I said is, actually, it depends. The students who are on campus, well, they'll go back to their reference group, but the ones who are working, they're, I guess you could say the sounding board, it's their company. So if they're taking a course with me on work life or on aging workers or on basic human resources management, they're kind of testing their sounding board, or their reaction is sometimes their wife and their family, but also their work environment. So it's kind of two different groups.
Yeah.
How do you review the learning outcomes if your students read before they have the experience for which they receive instruction? So I cannot imagine our students, they read in forward a theory without any explanation, without anything, and after that I cannot imagine how would I check the learning outcomes, if they are achieved or not.
Yeah, they have to, after the experience, they have to do two things. They have to write an essay of what they lived, and they have to share at the forum. It is a must. They have to share. Now, when they start, they have to share an initial comment. They have to make an initial comment, and they have to answer comments for their colleagues. It is a must. And I realized that they got the experience, and I can evaluate. Maybe it isn't so objective. If you make 10 question exam, it is really objective, because you know that the measure is 8.5, but or however you measure. But if you are doing this, you know that they are achieving what you want. What we do is the design that is called backwards designing. There's an article, I can share it to you. I think I have it. Backwards design, and what you have to think is, what is the evidence you want to have in your hand? And you think at the evidence, and then you go backwards. Now, if I want this evidence, I need this and this and this and this, and you get them to the evidence. Sometimes I have to take them by steps. If I want a marketing plan, I have to teach first one part, another part, and the end I get all together, because it is really difficult to get the evidence, and I measure with the evidence.
And how many students they start the course, both of you? How many students from the starting point finish the course?
Okay, I had once an experience that started 12, and at the end I had 1. the worst experience I had. Worst experience. It's really, really disappointing. This. It was. I after this experience, I redesigned everything. I put it into the trash, everything, and I started again. I had a very, very bad failure. I didn't explain. I was. I wanted them to be always there, and I was controlling too much. And after this experience, I let them go, let them be free, and that was much more better.
And you, Diana?
Well, for me it's a little bit difficult because I don't do it in the same way, in the sense that I have, since I've been here at the university, I've designed 15 or 16 courses, and so we tend to be tutor or really active tutor in some of our courses, but not all, so there's a lot of students. And what we find in general in the university is it depends on the, as on campus, it depends on what the objective is. One of the things that we have difficulty is to have them persevere to the end of a program. But the thing is that we force them to sign up for a program. As we have a lot of adult students, sometimes they come, for example, on work-family issues. That doesn't exist on campus. So they come for that. But in our system, we put them in a program. Usually when most of our, especially adult students, they tend to persevere quite well, but we do have a certain number of dropouts. More dropouts in social science than in management, for example. So the more it's related to their work, the more the employer is paying for the course, the more they persevere. If it's a personal interest, they just decided, oh, I'm going to take a course in Spanish or whatever, there's more dropout there.
So it is not possible to study your course without being, without signing
for a program. But that's a technical thing. It doesn't matter really after. The person comes and does a course and leaves after. But it's just kind of a technical thing. I don't know, in the universities.
Tuition fee in the beginning or not?
Do we have what?
Tuition fee.
Yes, of course. It's the same thing as campus.
Okay,
yes.
So it means they sign and they pay tuition fee, and after that it's up to them, of course, to study.
Yes, and they can be reimbursed as it's exactly as on campus. They pay the same cost. Actually, the advantage that they have, but we've been changing that. Initially, they paid the same cost as on campus, but they had all the material, the books, the videos for the same price. Now we have changed because some courses were more expensive. Either a book that cost $80, well, you know, we would make if it's $80 in the market and we did it, we might charge them $50 or whatever. Now, as it's more and more online, we don't charge them any more fees. It's just the regular. Because it's regulated by the state in Quebec. So they pay the same price on campus or distance for the course. If there's special materials, sometimes a bit more, but now more and more with online, it's the same thing. And as on campus, they have 2 weeks to abandon. If they decide they don't like the course or whatever, they have 2 weeks to abandon. And then, so some of them do that quickly because, of course, if we don't have any, well, they could sign up as a free student eventually as on campus, but the majority sign up. And if they have échec at the end, well, their average note goes down. So they tend not to. What they tend to do, I find more, maybe a little bit more in distance than campus, we give them this possibility. In our university, they can register anytime. It's not like the course doesn't start on January 8th. We do have a winter session, a summer session, and a fall session, but it's kind of theoretical. It's that, well, we tend to introduce new courses at each session. But of course, a student can come in at the end of January and start the course, and so his timeline will be a little bit different. And also, as you were talking about evaluation, in management, again, we're a little bit different because if it's social sciences, sometimes the students, it's more on a personal basis. In management or human resources, they want to present this to their employer, and so for it to be more credible, because for a long, well, especially historically, distance education was sometimes considered a little bit less of less quality, or the evaluation was kind of questioned, how is this done, whatever. So for us, it was extremely important to have an exam at the end, and so whenever let's say I start the course at the end of January, even if a lot of the others start at the beginning of January, we give them a suggestion, a timeline, a little bit like you have, a suggestion of what they should be doing. And they have a tutor who eventually, if the tutor does not receive the first work that the student's supposed to do well, the tutor is going to say, well, you know, you're maybe a bit late, whatever. But I have some students suddenly who do everything in 2 months, and they can do the exam. The exam is everywhere, and usually what we do is the université rents spaces every Saturday, once a month, in schools and different places, and so they have exams. So in one classroom you can have a student here doing my HRM exam, the other one's doing in communications, so that, well, they can't copy. If they copy, there's a bit of a risk there. But this actually ensures that the evaluation, so it can count for 40 or 50% sometimes of the mark. That's up to the prof to decide.
So the exams means that the students should come to your
Yeah,
university.
they have to come, but not to Montreal. They can be, the person is in, like Quebec is quite large, you know, it's bigger physically, geographically than France. So the student, if he's in a small region, he does the exam in a high school or a primary school where there are, he might have to drive 30 kilometers.
So it means that no foreign students can study, from example, from France or
yes, actually we have some foreign students, and again it's the same rules. If foreign students come to study in Quebec, they have higher tuition fees than Quebec. Quebec students have the lower, Canadian students have another level, and international another, except for the French students. When they come to Quebec, there's an agreement, which they have the same. But we cannot, and this is a discussion we're having with our government, particularly because of Martinique and Guadeloupe. We have a lot of people who would like to follow our courses, but of course the tuition fees are much too high for them. And our government now says the French students who come to Quebec pay the Quebec price, but not for distance. If they do it in a distance, for the moment it's not the case, but they're thinking of changing this, especially as we've had this demand from Guadeloupe.
But your exam, it is a traditional exam or is it online?
No, it's sitting in the class.
Traditional.
Yeah.
You don't have any.
In some courses, there's even no exams. Like in masters or DESS, there's no exams. It can be just a work that can be done. And some of my colleagues in other disciplines also don't have exams. We in some of my courses in the beginning we didn't have, but we really became conscious of the fact that in terms of recognition of the diploma and of the courses for the students in management particularly, and also in IT. So there's a certain number of disciplines, and I think we're tending to evolve where the exam sitting in a classroom is about 40 or 50%. So they can't go through the course without.
Because, for instance, in Denmark, university, you don't have any exam on table, and when students are coming from this, they are, we do our exam on our computer.
Yeah, there's a bit of a risk. The only thing I've seen like this is in Quebec is the permit to drive a boat. It's new. The last 3 years now they've imposed this. You can't drive a boat without a permit. And they said, oh, well, you know, everybody's not going to come and go do an exam, so it's online. You have to put your social insurance number and the social insurance number of somebody sitting, but they realize that there's a lot of fraud. You know, somebody gives you the social insurance and there's no. So for us, in terms of recognition of the diploma and of the course, we've imposed that in many courses. In other courses, like in language courses, it may be less important because the person either can speak or cannot speak in the end. And maybe if the degree or the course is not paid by the employer, what the person wants is just to learn how to speak. So it's less important. But when it's a professional domain, a professional degree, the students as well as the employers like the idea that it's written there, and you know, on the website they can check. There's a travail noté 1, 2, 3, and then there's an exam, sitting in class, individual. So.
Very many courses, which are the presence courses, do have an assignment which are presentations, of course, so how students deal with these team projects if they are online only.
You mean doing a presentation?
If they have any projects which are the team projects, if they do presentations.
Yeah, you can do it online. You can probably we do it online. Some of my colleagues who do research in that field had developed kind of online. It's something which looks like a conference. You know, on the website you see, here's a conference happening. You've done your work, go in the room so-and-so and present, either through Skype or Adobe Connect or whatever, present to the others. We don't do it in a synchronous way, but all the other students can come in and look at it. We have this more in DESS and Masters than in Licence. we tend to have this much more at that level because they're more interested in exchanging. The contents are also more, but I have it in 2 of my courses at the BA level also. There's this possibility.
Qu'est-ce que c'est ça? What's this?
Yes, it's a advertising campaign.
Corazón de lechuga.
Corazón de lechuga. It's, yes. What I do is also, as I show it to you. Here is the case. Is the case, and this is a 3 years case in 3 weeks. First week is the first year, second week is the second year, and the third week is the third year. And they make the first campaign, and here it is a brief. And after the first campaign, I gave them the results, and I say to them, when with this campaign you sold all this, and you had these results, and you are doing this, and they do the second year campaign and the third year campaign. This is a team. It's a team work, and they have to do it by themselves, and they use Skype, and they use phone, and they use even email, and they get in touch between them, and they solve the team. This was for working people, for people that paid for they were all already working, everybody, and the difficult thing was to be organized. It was really difficult because everybody has different times, and it was really difficult, but they can. They have Skype, they have email, they have plenty of tools. I've been using a tool that is called Team Viewer. Here I can write it for you.
In the meantime, can I ask, you said that you have a forum where the presentations could be shared and everyone can see it if they are online at the same time?
Or even if they come out another
even
time.
after. And yeah, from my experience, students learn very much from them. If they have a presentation, I comment on it, others have a question and so on. So this is something, is it somehow replaced or substituted by the e-learning? Because I find it very important for them, and I cannot imagine that it works online.
Yes, it does. But it tends to be, again, in our case anyhow, we do it more at the DOSS level. Again, partly because of at the bachelor's level, we did have, for example, teleconferencing, and now with Skype, etc. But there's a certain number of students who say to us, look, I came here for the flexibility, and I don't want to be, and again, because they're in a work environment, so they're testing their ideas and they're exchanging, they already have that place. So they're not limited to the student world, they have others. So they are less, they tend to want more flexibility and not too many constraints in terms of time and exchanging with the others. However, when they're more in the DOSS or masters and even PhD in IT, for example, then they are somewhat more interested in those kind of exchanges. So we tend to adapt it, and at the bachelor's level, not make it compulsory, but it's always possible. And also, they can do it in a more general way in the cafe, whatever, then they can exchange with students. But in the courses, the experience that we had was teleconferencing or Skype or imposing an exchange. Usually they don't appreciate, they don't necessarily need it, they don't want it. If you propose it and it's not compulsory, then it's okay. But it really tends to be more at the graduate level that they will find it more interesting. But it's very, very possible. The technologies are there, and you can really, it can be, you know, as if, well, especially the way you're doing the courses, you're very much exchanging with them. And I know that in Switzerland, I was evaluating a program, an EMBA in Geneva, and they also do it a little bit this way. So they're exchanging online. The technologies are there. It's really possible. It's even possible to work on documents together.
Yeah.
Do your work
and
you discuss and you say, oh, we should write it this way, and somebody's typing it in, and you can see who's correcting.
Yes, I understand.
But
If everyone is the same time online, but because of
Asynchronous is possible too.
Yes.
Asynchronous, you can do it too.
The forum
to
has
work on the
that.
same document if not everyone is connected. So
At a different time. Let's say, actually, if I'm developing a research project, sometimes it happens with France. Actually, we take advantage of the time differences. I'm working on it for a while. The other one will add some things or some questions later and come back. And it's true that for a lot, especially the adult students, but even the younger students who are on campus, often they come to us precisely because they say, okay, I'm doing 4 courses now on campus, but I'm also working part-time, and I want to do this one to have a little bit more time flexibility. And some of them also either already have a bachelor's. I think there's a big difference between students, very young students who are coming into the system, and students who already have a bit of an experience. Some of them will even say, I think we also have to recognize that some professors in the classroom are great, but some are very boring. And that's what the students say too. They say, well, some course I prefer. I don't think that the presence of the professor is going to give me so much. We have to recognize that not all of our colleagues are really, so stimulating and engaging. So some students will say, I prefer to do it this way. And I will choose to have some exchanges with students in some cases, and in some other cases, I'm here to learn by myself. For example, we have a lot of women with children. That's maybe, 40% maybe. And they say, look, I'm working, I've got kids, I live in the suburb, going back to the university at 7 in the evening and driving back and coming back at 10. Oof, no. A lot of them, and actually we have, each year we have a ceremony where we, put up the diplomas and newly graduated students. And often, of course, one of the big things is the recognition that for maybe, I don't know what the percentage is, but a certain percentage, I couldn't have done it any other way. So I think that's also, it's really an issue of accessibility.
So what is your time viewer?
Time viewer. It is a conference room. The team viewer, you can search in internet for it. Teamviewer.com. Teamviewer.com. It is free for universities. It is a conference room, and you can manage. I think 50 people at the same time.
What do you mean when you say manage? You are writing mail, or you are looking
you
to
have,
people at the same time?
We use Adobe Connect also, but for smaller groups, where you can have the image of different people and be exchanging at the same time. And you can write and you can talk. You can do both. Usually you can write at the bottom of the page and you can exchange.
Yes, the other, you can give the control of the... Yeah, here, maybe there's an image. Yeah, you start the meeting and you can share your desktop. You share your desktop and the others look at your desktop, and even if you need that someone takes control, they can come in and start using your computer.
So it's a bit like a video conference.
Like a video conference, yes.
And we see the students, or
You don't see the students.
they can talk.
They only see you. They see you. They see you, and they see your desktop.
Okay.
But they can ask questions. It's not possible.
Yes, yes. You can mute them, or you can give them the microphone. They raise a hand. A virtual. They raise a hand. Yes. They raise a hand, you see it, and then you give them the.
It's not by writing.
Yes.
They write the question or they ask?
They have a chat. They write a question, or and you are able to give them the microphone if you want them to speak, and they speak, or everybody can speak at the same time. Here, it is a free. It is free for universities yeah.
L'autre, c'est Adobe Connect, qu'on utilise, mais avec des plus petits groupes. Et effectivement, it's exactly the same principle. Well, it's an icon, lever la main, and you say, okay. Or I can say, well, the other person is going to take control of the meeting from this point on. Donc, la présente.
And it's easy to use?
Very easy. Yeah. And it tends to.
Adobe Connect?
Adobe Connect. Yeah.
Because I have been asked by Auchan Group for that kind of course, and there were 30 people. And here at the university, they said, no, it's not possible. So we have to change.
Webinars for companies often use, I don't know, I've been working with some banks and so on. They tend to have internal systems of webinars where you can present and people can ask questions.
They were in all France, even everywhere.
Yeah. Well, they just have to be in front of a computer. Yeah.
Because Skype, we can't use it at the university. That's right.
No. And
because I've
maybe
been told that it was not possible to use Skype because we have
Yeah,
a special version. Or
in France, I think they consider those confidentiality issues.
That's right.
Although for courses, I find it's a little bit exaggerated. But I know for the researchers, the CNRS has put out something saying there's a confidentiality issue. I also find often when I'm connected with France, I don't know, I think it's the technology, you would know this better. For some reason, it seems to jump a lot and you're cut off. I was doing an interview for a course recently with a French colleague who's at the CNRS in Paris, and it was cut 3 times. So this is more a question of the equipment of the university or of the CNRS. That has to be good enough, because otherwise you get a little bit more.
And with this tool, you don't have this kind of problem.
If you have a connection problem, you will have it. Because the same, almost the same. But if you have good internet speed, broadband width.
Probably if you're working with companies, they would tend to do well.
And if you will, if you are not getting money from this, it is free. But if you are selling your courses using this, yes, you have to pay. But it is. It isn't so. It isn't. Yeah. But it is nice. It is nice to use it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question? Yes. According to your experiences, is it possible to measure the advantages of these new methods? According to the traditional methods, do you have any
measure
evaluation? Okay. For example, with your new models, is it possible to measure the success of students?
I don't specifically work in that field, but in my university there's a lot of people in the field of education, IT and education, and we have a research group specialized in all of these types of themes like perseverance, what are the factors that play in evaluation. And just generally, I think recently I've read that the general conclusion is that learning results are as good now.
As good?
As good.
Yeah.
Not more.
They can be better sometimes. But on average, in general, they're at, in the sense that I think traditionally the hypothesis was that they would be less. They are at least as good. And again, it depends on the groups. If I'm thinking of my adult students, as on campus, so the adult students, they're more engaged, they're more involved,
It's more convenient.
So they, And I have clearly found that, as I was saying, in terms of number of pages, they don't count their investment. That whereas sometimes the students in class are really kind of negotiating, I just want to get the degree, I just want to get the note. But again, it's a question of their engagement, their involvement. So, but I know that the general analysis, when you read it, especially with this research on the MOOCs, and this question has come up again. What is the value of a MOOC course or whatever? Well, the issue is, what has the person learned? And so depending there's some motive evaluations that can be better or not, but when the people in education, because those are the kind of people who work on this in the education field, they have done a lot of research, and in our university there's a lot of people doing PhD thesis or in the Université Laval, people in educational technology. They have done research comparing two groups in a very systematized way, and the recent results tend to indicate that there's really no difference.
Okay. So it's
per
more
se
convenient for the daily life than for the intellectual result.
Yeah.
C'est plus facile pour la vie quotidienne de faire des études que vraiment une différence intellectuelle.
Oui, voilà. Le résultat peut être tout à fait équivalent. Il sera parfois meilleur quand les gens sont plus engagés parce que ça arrive souvent, puisque justement, ils ont dû faire des efforts importants. Ils viennent vraiment là chercher quelque chose. C'est quelque chose de vraiment...
useful. According to the students, do they prefer this method rather than the old ones?
Yeah, that was an interesting question she had put forward. It's difficult to answer because a certain number of them, I don't know what your experience is, some of them come because of the constraint. I was talking about the women with children, it's a possibility. Then there's some people, a lot of my students come and they say, this and this and this course is not offered on campus. And I have a lot of people either on campus or in university coming to take a whole course on work family. So they will say, well, it's better. But what is interesting, there's some universities offer both in the US, for example. And I don't know, you do a little bit of the same. Some professors are teaching 2 courses campus and 2 distance. Okay. And I know that some of the universities in the US have observed that the distance online courses fill up before. Mm-hmm. We don't measure it that way because, of course, we're mainly distance and the people come for that. But it's true that some American universities or Australian universities have been able to measure because they have the professor who's animating the same course, one online, one campus. Okay. And apparently they have some of them, and it's the professor who said this to me. He said, I'm surprised, but I'm seeing now that my online course is filled up before my class course.
Okay, so it means that we need to take both methods.
And probably more the younger students. Mm-hmm. More and more the younger students.
Yes, a little bit. They are really afraid because they are not in touch with the person. Mm. And what I say to them is that they will be, even when you are online, you have much more contact with the person. When you are here in the room, there is someone sitting over there at the end of the classroom and never talks, never. Maybe it could be all the class, all this semester, you never hear the voice. But online he has to.
But you can have also the opposite. Some children are speaking,
yes,
and they don't like.
What I've
in Switzerland, when I went to this evaluation, we met, of course, the professors, everybody, and we met some students. And one of them gave a témoignage which was really poignant because he was exactly that case. He said, I was really somebody I never spoke, and their system is a little bit like yours. And he said, well, I started daring to ask questions online and then kind of got caught up in the discussion. So it's interesting. I think it's a different habit. It's a different, but when you're talking about the ones who would be more comfortable speaking or asking questions orally.
Yes, maybe.
Well, for us, we have tutors, so they can call or they can write.
But like I know we're in a classroom full of teachers, but from the students, can you imagine you're 18, just coming to university, and you only have your computer, you're not meeting people.
Well, that's what I was saying. The difference is between the ones who come at 18 versus 20, 21, And also, that's what I was saying, I think the future is not in one or the other. Mm-hmm. The future is blending, hybrid. Yeah. So that students, because sometimes I think we all have the experience of students who are supposed to be reading and supposed to be involved in the class, and they don't read and they don't talk, or they just ask questions without having read. And I think really the future is a combination where you come into the class for real exchange. And I know when some French professors, colleagues of mine, when they said, oh, you're in distance education, don't you miss the contact with the students? I said, what are you talking about? Jussieu, Paris 1, the prof is in front, talking on a microphone with 250, and even I think recently in Belgium they were saying they were creating a new amphi for 900 or 1,000 students. So I said, you know, where is the contact with the student here? So I think it's really a question of dosing. I would never say, and we actually tend to say to our students, if they want to do a licence or a BA, we say to them it would be a good idea if you went for 1 year on campus. And campus, actually, people say, it might be interesting for you to take a certain number of online courses because you're going to become more autonomous and etc. and learn different skills. This other guy, he was not only shy but didn't know the computer, so he said it was really an experience for him. So I think, yeah, the future is more in how do we blend these different technologies together, not so this or this, but how do we blend this together? Within a program, like for us, for a BA, we say, look, this is on campus, this would be 3 years. If you, maybe you do your 2 years distance in different ways, but you make sure you do maybe 1 year on campus or 1 semester. You can't get off from your employer a whole year, do 1 semester here, another semester. And I think then it really kind of enriches the learning process. But I think, as you say, the younger, especially in the US, I don't know about Australia, but in the US they come into university and college quite young. In Quebec we have le cégep. So they already come a little bit older at university, so you know they have had this experience. But I think it's true that that experience is important. But it's more in the perspective of lifelong learning to make sure that you respond to the needs.
Yeah, especially like in France, like everybody's going to university. It's free, it's public, and not everybody is going there because they have a goal and something they really want to do. Sometimes they're just looking for what they want to do and what they want to learn. They're not working, and going to university is also making up your mind on what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's about learning, but there's much more about it also.
Yeah.
So that's the difficult part with the computer. You're learning your subject and having a good grade and experiencing things in a good way, but what about making up your mind? I mean, in American or Australian way, you're just going to university because you have to go and you're paying a lot of money to go there, so you cannot fail and you cannot just say, I don't care. But in France, a lot of people are actually doing this, which is, I don't know what it is, but you know, the question of the different models in different countries is also really important, I think, to talk about those kind of learning systems. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it's true that like in France, of course, I found students, as you say, they come to the university, they come quite young, and also maybe it's changing a bit now, but they don't tend to work much part-time. I mean, when I did my PhD in France, I was, I don't know, 28, I think. And most of the students who were with me were they had never stopped. They had never even done research assistant tasks, which we tend to do. So it's true that the whole experience is different. We have cégep, which is the equivalent of lycée, but a lot of young people go there. In the US and Canada, people are more working part-time, so you know their friends are all, they have another network, they have another. So it's true, as you say, all this has to be taken into account, so that obviously nobody's going to be just living their whole life just with the computer. That would be quite dramatic.
Yes, but it is also because the students have computer now, and when we are in front of the student, we don't have the eyes of the students, we have computer. So I think we need to practice learning, because I don't want to have a computer in front of me. I want to have a student looking sometime to me and sometime looking to the computer. That's the most difficult.
And when they're looking at the computer, they might as well be looking at it at home.
Yeah, exactly.
A colleague, I don't know how it was here, but in Montreal, it was a certain number of years ago that HSC imposed all the students had to buy a computer, come into class with a computer. And I remember a colleague of mine said, well, as you were saying, she said, it's so annoying. At one point, she was so mad that she even went and closed the computer, because the first one in front, it's just there, doing his business kind of thing. And she says, so I think it comes back to this. When we're together, maybe we can be talking and exchanging, and rather than having the professor presenting something, but all the others are, one's looking at his thing, the other one's sending Facebook, the other one's doing something else. So the idea is when we're together, we take advantage, and we're really together.
Right.
And then the rest of the time, you're on the computer and you do. So it's kind of, I think, dividing the learning experience in different ways.
In our team, we are mathematics. The computer is forbidden. So they are only pencils. It's impossible in math to write with the computer because we have a lot of symbols and it takes a long time to write them with the computer. So it's forbidden. But we have a new technology. We have the platform. We have other technology. I think it's a good deal. I accept because they knew that. Computer is forbidden during the classroom, but many other technologies are allowed outside of the classroom. So it's a deal.
Yeah, it's what do we keep and what do we throw away with these technologies?
Yes, I have another question about the different tools you have presented according to online courses. Do you know the preferences from the students about these different tools? Is it video? Is it platform? Is it? Do you have a hierarchy?
I think it's more a combination. Like for example, when I have video, it's short video, it's a sort of documentary, it's a case study. What I have heard from students and also from the tutors is they like the diversity. They definitely like the case studies that are presented in video because it gives them a view in other companies. Either they work in one and they don't know the others, or as a younger student they haven't worked very much in different places, so that they really like that. They also like the fact that you can put different websites, a lot of resources, everything's available. They really appreciate.
So it's a mix of different.
Yeah, I think it tends to be a mix. And however, we also have some specialists in terms of the ergonomy of the place, because now, for example, I have an intern. She is following our program that we have in distance education and educational technology, etc. And it's interesting because she was even criticizing some of the tools that I developed with an educational specialist. But she says, oh, well, according to my course, I don't find the ergonomy, I think all the things should be up on the side. And we know that, as I was showing you on the left side, you have the majority of things. Well, in another class, it's been designed differently. And a lot of professors want to design things differently. And the educational specialists, the graphics people, each has kind of their view on things. So these we're still discussing. But I think also, this intern was saying, she's really followed a lot of courses. She's done her whole BA and now she's doing a master's in distance education. So it's the equivalent of 4 years full time. She's done it all distance. So she knows courses pretty well and she's able to talk, not only as a specialist but as a student. And so she was saying that she really enjoyed the diversity, but she says, look, between your two courses, I really like the way this one is done and this one, you should use this and put this here. So they have preferences in terms of mainly the ease in finding things. Just as we do, sometimes, when I'm doing a research grant proposal, sometimes I find, my God, is it complicated? So it's basic ergonomics of the website. That is really important to have specialists so that the student's not looking for the material or not getting lost
Okay, and just another one question.
Take your time.
According to the culture, for example, Mexico, US, French, is it possible to identify different way of using technologies, and do we need to adapt according to the country, according to the culture, according to you?
Okay, we are using the same platform. You are using Moodle, we are using Moodle, and you are using Moodle. I think that it is because it's free. And it's really easy to use, and there are LMS, learning management systems, that are really expensive, like Blackboard is one of them, and I think there is no need of having it. The beginning of the distance education was by mail, and we did it very well with the mail, and they send it to you a box with your books, and you studied very well, and you send back your assignments. I think it's the same. Even if you think it, you can design a whole course only with an email. You don't need technology. You only need the correct instructions for doing what you want to do, and maybe we use a platform because it's easier to have all the resources in the same place. But I think you can use any technology.
You know, in relation to this, I'm thinking again of this intern. She mentioned something about, well, again in management or in maybe more professional fields where they want to keep the material. She said one thing, she said, you know, in this other course, it looks like it's a lot of fun. I mean, we use different features. In terms of the culture, I think maybe some will use more this feature and this year, and I'm not sure it's a cultural thing, it's more maybe a personal thing. And then or the people you're working with. But she said, you know, in one of your courses, it's actually quite difficult. It's fun on the website because there's a question there, you answer, and you kind of get a feedback. But it's more complicated to print everything out. And she was saying, you know, in your courses, there's usually a book. And she says, I like the book. And I've had students react to the fact that the book wasn't quite ready, it hadn't been published yet, so we had this document boudiné, and the student said, a couple of them wrote and said, will I have the book after, you know, because I kind of paid for the book. And some of them are saying, well, you know, I paid for the course. If it's online, and I don't have access to any material afterwards, I feel I'm a little bit cheated out of something. So this is also interesting. What is their reaction towards the material, keeping things, having access to the video or the documents? Yeah. So I think we use the different features, but not much from a cultural perspective. Maybe one thing that might differentiate different countries would be, I know I work a lot on telework, and on telework, it's true telework was more developed in the Anglo-Saxon countries, UK, Great Britain, now Northern Europe. France, according to the Conseil d'analyse stratégique, so according to the French themselves, is considered as a laggard, retardataire. So, and I think in distance education, it is a little bit retardataire, but as in many other things, there can be un grand bond en avant and a quick catch-up, you know?
Yes, but there is another problem. In France, we say that we take care a lot about our intellectual rights.
Yes.
So it's why we don't want that everybody can. So is it the same thing in Quebec or in Mexico? How do you manage?
Well, see, in our university, initially, there was kind of this vision that we're working for a distance education university, so everything we produced was owned by the university. Then the professors started saying, look, a campus professor does a book, he has the rights. And so we have renegotiated, and since 2006, everything we do, not only the books, but even the videos, although there was a lot of discussion. Personally, I preferred people to see my videos and to have the videos on television. In any case, I'm not going to become a millionaire with these things, you know? So I thought it was better that they were seen in different places. However, for the books, I think it's better that it's equivalent. If it's online, there can be a bit of a discussion because it's not managed by Société des Auteurs or whatever, but it could be. I don't know how it's clearly. Also, there's maybe kind of a general trend. When I was talking about these learning objects, etc., people in IT and people in education, in distance education, there's this very strong movement, as with journals, you must have seen the open access journals. So there's kind of this general trend that knowledge, education should be shared. And so I think probably online courses, people might have the same kind of vision as with articles, you know, open access journals, that they should be made available. And the learning object or the repository is one of the expressions they use. I know that I had kind of a mixed feeling on this, in the sense that especially for the videos, I think, at one point I might want them to be, you know, I consider they're not valuable anymore, they're not up to date, so I don't necessarily want to have them circulating all over. So yeah, we would maybe like to have a certain control. But at the same time, you can think, well, you know, if I judge that they're out of date, probably my colleagues will also think so, and they won't be using them. And the books, it's the same thing. And they become outdated; they're just less used. So, you know, we never now we have the rights on the document. So what it means, I used to publish with Télé Université in association with Presse de l'Université du Québec. Presse de l'Université du Québec was not the publisher, but did the distribution. The advantage for us, I found, is that our university, since all our teaching material is, everything we do is our essence. So they didn't want anything to go out with, mistakes or whatever. The students are going to say, oh. And so we had excellent, even my publisher who was doing the distribution said, I couldn't pay for such quality, revision of the writing, the graphics, everything. He said, this is really a top-notch service. Now, over the years, though, there's a bit of a discussion in terms of how much it costs, and so there might be some reductions. But I think now we go directly to the publisher. I have my manuscript, and I bring it to the publisher, and it's the publisher who does the editing, etc., etc. But there's different possibilities there. Yeah.
We don't have anything organized as it seems to be over there at TELUC. Yeah. This experience I have in online education is mine, and we are very, very few doing this at the university. We are maybe 4 or 5 teaching online courses. Nobody else is doing it, and then we don't have the resources or the policies for doing things. Last year started that a new rule, and everyone who wants to design has to go to the educational department, and they have to evaluate and review before you design. And they started almost last year. And it is really recent, this experience. We are not well organized, and I think you can get lots of benefits if you are organized and if you have if you start a project or e-learning as a project or as an extension of the university.
I don't understand quite well. You say you need a permission.
Now we have.
You prepare something. You
Yeah.
have an e-learning project. Do you say you need to have a permission to put your course on the
Yes.
platform? Or I don't understand exactly what
At this moment, yes.
Yeah.
A permission from the authorities of the university. Yes, the educational department.
But the
Education
permission
department.
is because you're supposed to be doing a course in class, so you have to ask for permission to do it.
No, it's because they want to that every course has the same methodology or the same structure, and yes, design. It is a design matter of education design matter. Yes, you are the one that knows about the topic. Then you are able to put what you need, but it is a design matter. Yes.
You want to standardize. Okay.
Yeah. That's what
it's not the same. You can do what you want.
I think what I was saying also, at one point some colleagues, especially in IT and education, had developed systems that are the same kind of system, learning system as Moodle. And one said, oh, mine is much better because the relation between the tutor and the students is much better here. Another one, well, mine, I don't want to take Moodle because Moodle is too standardized, and in mine this is better. So in each of these 3 models there was something that was better, it's true. But it became costly to support all these systems. And so after a while, the university said, we're going this way, and we can introduce some of the elements that the colleagues developed in the system. But it's true that it's not, if we look at mine, the graphics are different. And actually, I think it's interesting to have different graphics, but at the same time, in a given program, we tend to have similar graphics, so that, it's part of a program, so we give it a certain identity. So yeah, we do certain things, but within a certain frame. because otherwise it's true that we're taking up IT specialist, multimedia specialist time, and that costs money. And one thing we didn't necessarily mention, which is also different, as you, it's like you're doing it, and as you say, you're for us, it's many, and so the university manages, like the registration of students, follow-up of students. A colleague in UCAM, which is a campus university, at one point wanted to do a distance course in law. And so he did the whole course and design, and I was working with him a little bit, helping him out and everything. And then when he wanted to offer it as a distance course at UCAM said, well, how do we manage this? How do we offer this course?
Yeah.
I don't understand why they found it was so complicated, but it seemed to them that, sometimes there's a bit of a prerequisite. We have an online system that manages the students, and each session also I go online to check the materials for the courses. If I change something, I indicate it. The exams, and there's like 4 or 5 versions, so I indicate, well, this session is this version, this version, this version. So, the bigger it is, at one point you need to have something in the university managing this. So those are 2 different models. If you're doing it, if some professors are doing it on an individual basis, versus if it becomes a whole sector.
Any questions?
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.